Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how there are certain pockets of, whether it be on social media or various institutions in our public service departments, there's a real concerted effort to hate on white people, particularly white males and straight white males, but there's the anti-white hatred is insane, whether it be across the media or social media platforms and so on. And just to sort of illustrate this and give it some wider context, it seems to get a job at the previous Twitter administration or previous iteration of Twitter. This is before Mr. Musk took it over. The only qualification for getting a job was to hate white people, to hate white culture, to hate white countries, to hate white history, all the while working in a white country and benefiting from white taxes and white consumer power and so on. So the irony of that appears to be lost on these people. But I think that's the only qualification for getting a job. One thing that sort of surprised me is looking at the various interviews and postings online from Twitter employees or ex-Twitter employees or about to be ex-Twitter employees is how their qualifications, that none of them seem to have, or very few of them seem to have any qualifications. I mean, what used to, when I sort of started work, a data engineer or something like that meant that you actually had to be an engineer of some description, 5 years at university and all that sort of thing. But data engineer doesn't mean that. You can have a 6-week course now and become a data engineer. So these people running around with the title engineer, it sounds very, very exciting. But what it really means is you're a censor. You're meant to censor things. So the amount of Indians, subcontinent people who were in Twitter responsible for censoring, information, and they believe that there's a number of things that comes across all that. Firstly, they believe that their job was to give a voice on the Twitter platform, give a voice to non-white people, and that was their role. So anything that was anti-white people was seen as giving a voice to non-white people. But white people couldn't respond in kind, so they had to shut white people down to give the advantage. They clearly thought or perceived that their role was to put their finger on the scales. Now, not their finger, stand on the thing. So the vitriolic hatred they had for white people and white society, white culture, white countries was quite marked. I mean, it's like, whoa, and yet these people were in charge of censorship. Not surprisingly, they censored anyone who spoke out against mass migration, because all these Indians and their relatives and their aunts and uncles and cousins, and they're genetically quite homogenous, or very homogenous. They perceive that the Indians should have the right to go to any white country anywhere in the world whenever they feel like it, without impediment, restriction, or limitation. And so anyone spoke out against mass immigration was really directly attacking India, as they would see it, or directly attacking the methodologies and the devices and the mechanisms and the structures and the policies that they would use to come to places like America or Britain or Australia, for that matter. So this is something that I've noticed. I don't think I've come across a single Twitter employee, certainly that I've seen on the internet, their postings and their single one that has anything kind to say about white people, white societies, white countries, which is very much the experience here in Australia as well. Whereas Indians will concede, well, no, I come to Australia because it's not as crowded, it's more orderly, there are no riots, it's clean, it's not corrupt, and they'll list off they'll make a long list of things that you'd think would be positives, but they go, no, it's still an evil, fascist, racist, fucking Nazi, bigoted, xenophobic country, and who don't appreciate or don't don't understand, our moral and spiritual superiority. So, damn white devils. Well, how come the country's so well run and managed? Well, it's only rich because they stole everything from the black people. That's why, the black and brown people. They stole everything. That's the only reason the white people are rich. It's not because it's more orderly. There are no riots. There's no corruption, or much less corruption. It's nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with technology, organisation. No, that's irrelevant. It's because they're damn white, evil, fucking fascist Nazi devils that stole everything from the brown people. So we're just coming back. We're just coming to the white countries to take back what's ours in the first place. So, okay, interesting attitude there. So they're very much on board with denigrating white people at every opportunity and denying white people a voice. And the sense of, us now, the brown people, we have power over the white people. It's like a drunken aphrodisiac to them, that they love it. The idea that we can, I reckon they get a hard on out of it. The idea that we now tell white people what they can and can't say, and who's allowed to speak, which white people are allowed to talk and in the public square. And this, I think they really get off on that. But when an interview is coming in, someone's being interviewed for a job, if you want somebody to censor the news or censor what do? Do you want someone who's even-handed, who's going to look at every angle and go, okay, well, the Hunter Biden laptop story, it's not proven to be false. Until we have clear evidence to the contrary, we're going to let the claims go. We let the false claims about Donald Trump and the Russian prostitutes, we let that run rampant. So we should allow this to, we should be. So if you get someone that comes in like that, and your job is to crush, the white society, and your job is to control the public square, to make sure that the white people cannot complain about the mass migration, the being, the replacement being replaced, about their savage reduction in standard of living, and so on. And so the changing of their community, that they're all being accused of being racist, pedophile, this and that, and Nazis. And you've got to stop them complaining about it or having a voice to fight back. That's your job, to stop it. Because if you don't stop them, then if you don't shut them down, then that means that it's going to impede the globalist project. And the globalist project will mean taking wealth from white people and giving it to brown and black people. Non-meritoriously, of course, but you're in favour of that anyway. Regardless of how much you hate white people, you're still in favour of that. So if someone's sitting down interviewing, do you hate white people? Yeah, too fucking right, I hate white people. Well, they've stolen everything from the brown and black. Yeah, slavery, Hitler, yeah. You're hired, buddy. And then they've got the job of curating what information we're allowed to see. So as long as white people are denigrating other white people, they're allowed to speak. But any white people go, hey, what is it with this mass migration? Hey, what about the illegal immigration? What's going on here? How can't and so on and so on. Then no, they have to be shut down. That's not allowed. And any white person gets a big following, and they get a bit too influential, and they're persuading too many members of the public about the folly of the globalization project and so on. Then shut them down, take them off the platform. Well, what reason will we give? We don't have to give a reason. The guy's a fucking fascist Nazi, and I saw this across so many posts that were from ex-Twitter employees, even current ones for that matter, where they're saying we're not shutting down people with sort of alternative points of view we don't agree with. There's nothing that. We're only shutting down Nazis. They're Nazis. So they just arbitrarily declare someone as being a Nazi. We can shut them down without cause or giving a reason because they're Nazis. And this was something that was rampant. But it's like children. They're behaving like children. Even that Parag, in my opinion, at least that Parag Araval guy. When he spoke, he just spoke like a, and so did the other senior management in Twitter. They all spoke as if they were, in some first-year gender studies debating club or something like that. They seem to have no concept of reality. They spoke and acted and behaved like irresponsible, entitled children who are being paid millions of dollars a year. But according to the globalists, these people are performing a valuable service. They are keeping the globalist monopoly on narrative creation and information flow. And because of that, and that's very valuable to the globalists. Because of that, they're to be paid handsomely, even though they're producing and creating nothing. They're paid handsomely for that. Control of the narrative is vital to the globalist project. Without control of the narrative, the globalist project will struggle because it's unsaleable to the Western white people, utterly unsaleable. So now, just to look at this sort of seeding people in there who hate white people. I mean, I was going back over a divorce court, sort of a particular jurisdiction of divorce courts, and going back over their job advertisements. So when they were advertising for people to work in the court and to work in all sorts of capacities, in clerical, administrative roles, counselling roles, any role at all. Could be a minor paralegal position, that sort of thing. So going over the adverts, every fucking advert in this particular jurisdiction, every advert asserted that the preference would be given not preference, it was mandatory that you had to have a gender studies. You either had to be studying gender studies, a course on how to hate men, all families are bad, all men are evil, oppressor, rapists, and so on. You had to either be studying or have a degree in gender studies. There were some other psychology degrees of specializing in the oppression of women and things like that. But you had it was an absolute requirement. You had to be anti-family. This is divorce court, by the way. Now, it's meant to be a court of law, or purports to be. I mean, it's not. It's an ideological court, but people going in there don't know that, nor, as I said, there's this unwritten law. It's just not codified. Unwritten law about victims and oppression and compensation for victims of oppression and so on. That's not codified at all. You don't know going in there or any litigant doesn't know going in there. So they've got this thing where you had to hate men, you had to hate the family, and you had to hate Western civilization, patriarchal or anything that resembles a so-called patriarchal construct. You had to hate everything about that and believe it was wrong, it was evil, and that women are victims that should be compensated, and that money or that wealth should be forcibly taken from straight white men and given to these women, and that would be social justice. So they purposely went out to hire people who hated straight white men and hated families. But none of this was declared in the court proceedings. Or none of this was codified into law. So when someone goes in, to litigate in the divorce courts, there's no thing saying, look, we've hired people who hate men. It's our policy to have people who hate men, who hate families, who think all men are evil, and that's that's not declared. And given what a huge and primary role this serves, the environment it creates in a so-called alleged court, then this should be declared. It should be made absolutely clear, but it's not. And all of the court advisors and people all around the court that supply services to the court, alleged experts that are supposed to interview family members, all these are men haters and family haters and so on. So we've got a situation where this an alleged court of law is purposefully going out and handpicking people who hate men, and it's a court where its job is to steal wealth from men to give to women. And I mentioned this before. When two lesbians come into court, they're viewed as having equal social power. So the court won't help one advantage one over the other. So the idea, this ideological issue of social power is what's driving every court decision, but it's not declared in law. And this is the problem with ideological courts, and more courts and more laws becoming ideological. For example, the people who are custodians of the Constitution should have gone chasing after all the social media platforms for not being even-handed and supporting what the globalist cause, and then trying to crush all other voices and so But yet they didn't. The body politic hasn't. There's no constitutional group of bodies done it. It's been hard. When the reverse is the case, then they're going hysterical. But none of them did that. And upholding the law and the rule of law, due legal process, the Constitution, these sorts of things, and absolute fairness under the law. These are things that are vital to Western society, or indeed any society that wants to be successful. And the globalists are purposefully trashing this in order to undermine, destroy, and otherwise, fuck up Western society. But this idea of handpicking people who hate men or hate straight men, hate Western society, all these hate white people, all this sort of stuff. This is being done in so many places now. I mean, it's unbelievable, whether it be the social media companies or, the divorce court example that I mentioned there, but also in other areas, the council who decides what exhibits are seen in museums. Suddenly the government appoints a whole new committee or board of control, all of whom are activists who hate white society and Western society. Now, some of these people are bribed with baubles and riches to do it. So I don't mind fucking up my fellow citizens because I'm going to get a waterfront home and a $10 million yacht off the jetty. There are people who can be bought off, but for the most part, they're simply hiring people and putting them in these roles. Whether it's the largesse of the government or something, putting people in these roles just hate white society, hate white people, and straight white males. And we're allowing this to happen. We're not pushing back against. We're not demanding that our body politic, or indeed the organs and institutions of our public service, and say, no, you can't do that. And if you find people doing that, or people are in, then they're breaking the law. They're breaking the law, and they should be prosecuted and removed from those positions. And that's important. But look, to the globalist perspective, if they have impartial people in there, or people that believe in Western society, then the globalist project, they just can't move ahead with it. So they have to have people in those places who hate Western society, hate straight white males, in order to further the globalist project. And that's how those people end up being in those roles. But it's extremely widespread. We have to put a stop to it. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.